So I was actually going to come down here and do a quick little, last second dive into some of these cards in this collection. Do a quick little scan on some of them that might actually be pullable. And I figure why not do that and have the camera rolling and we can talk about a little something. And because something was actually on my mind recently and I wanted to kind of go over it. The other day, actually, I just posted up the short, I think this morning, actually, I just posted up the short of the actual pull of that Helm of Obedience card from the Alliances pack on my channel. And I kind of want to talk about some vintage cards for a little bit, for anyone that's interested. That's what I'm going to talk about for a little bit, is vintage cards and kind of my perspective on a few things right now. And what I think the state of them is right now, and honestly, like, my curiosity of where they're going to go in the future. So, again, I played back in 94, and I was 10 years old. So I was 10 years old in 94. Now we're in 2025, and I'm 40. I'm almost 41. And I think about who's interested in these old cards and what are actually, like, where the market can actually go in the future, and if people are even going to be interested in the long term for older cards like that. Because right now, obviously, the market for older cards, again, love the island art. The market for older cards, I feel like it's been slow for a while. Obviously in 2020 we had a big boom of it. People were putting anything they could, any money they could into old collectibles and Magic and things like that. But it's kind of died down, and it's funny because it sparked my, I guess it kind of got my brain thinking a little bit about vintage cards when I pulled that Helm of Obedience the other day, and just how goddamn gorgeous those are. And again, I'm biased because I'm older. I grew up playing in the 94, 95 era. I grew up playing in the 90s Magic. We opened packs to Revise, Alliances, Mirage. I think I opened a couple packs with Legends, I think, but I'm not sure. And all those sets from that era, they're absolutely incredible. The art is phenomenal. And they're just completely different than what Magic is like today. When you look at some of the old Magic art, I mean, even here's like an old Chronicles card. I mean, it's very simple, but it's very cool. Even here's some Fallen Empire stuff. Old art like this, it's absolutely incredible. Versus some of the newer stuff, I guess this is what, Zendikar Rising, Kaldheim. Extremely good art, but it's just different. It feels different. And I was thinking about how, okay, it's been 30 years since I started playing Magic. Obviously, there was like a 20-year break, so I haven't been playing for 30 years. But the interest goes up, it goes down, and things like that. And I think you always wonder how new generations and new eras of players will kind of look at old things like that, kind of like the video game industry or the comic book industry or things like that. And you wonder how people Dreamcast. I don't think that's anything. And I always wonder how people are going to look at it further on down the road, years and decades down the road. And obviously, like I said, right now, there's a lull in the kind of vintage stuff. People aren't as interested in it right now, and the prices are pretty favorable if you want to grab some cool old stuff and add them to your collection. And again, I'm not so much of an advocate of like speculating on cards, the words, quote, investing. I'm not really like that. If I buy an old card, it's just for myself because I just want it, plain and simple. It's not because I don't plan on selling them in the future. Those are just for me to have. For example, like years ago, I bought like a piece of power, my only piece of power. Yes, it's a collector's edition one. Yes, it's a Mox Pearl. It's the cheapest one I could possibly get, just to say I had a piece of power. And I think that's a rare. Yeah, it is. Not that it's worth anything. But it's just something that I bought it because I bought it for myself to appreciate it, and I just wanted to have it. It's as simple as that. It's not because I plan on selling it down the road. I may sell it someday, but that's not why I bought it. I bought the cards because I absolutely love them. And I think that's the difference with some of the old cards versus the new cards. New cards nowadays, there's always new things coming out, and there's always the next hype of this, next hype of that. Again, love that card. The art is funny. And I always wonder where it's going to go 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, and 30 years down the road. Again, I'm 40 years old right now, and I'm about to be 41. And I think about how I had the love for the old stuff, specifically the older cards. That's where my love is. And that's what I collect mostly is old cards. And I wonder if there's going to be that same connection with newer players for the old cards. Now, it's tough because you can't really have a connection with it, I feel like, unless you grew up with it. When you had that connection as a kid, it's a whole different feeling than when you just found it later on in life. But like, again, I was like 10 years old, and a lot of people that were like 10, 15, 20 years old, you're growing up playing this game in Magic in 1993, 1994, 95, the 90s in general, and you're going to have that connection with it. So it makes me wonder if people even can have that same kind of connection with it down the road. And honestly, I don't know if you can. I think that's like a special unique thing. It's like watching like watching a movie when you're a kid, right? If you are in like the 70s or 80s, if you saw like Star Wars back then, it was the craziest thing in the world, right? When you watch those new ones now, are they good? Yeah, they're really good, but it's not as magical as when you were, say, like a kid, and it gets ingrained in your brain, and it's absolutely incredible thing. And so it makes me think about, where will like vintage cards be in, say, like 10 years? So 10 years, if I'm still around, I'll be 50 years old. Sure, I'm still probably gonna be the exact same place I am now, wanting to collect them, wanting to grab them, and I'm gonna keep adding them to my collection and searching for cards that I appreciate the art, I appreciate just the feeling of the old card, honestly. And okay, that's fine. 20 years down the road, 30 years down, let's say 30 years down the road, it's the year 2055 and we haven't blown ourselves up yet, and we're still kicking around this planet. You know, if I'm 70 years old, I'm still around, am I still gonna be collecting old Magic cards? We're the people that are, you know, kids now, 10 years old, getting into new sets like Final Fantasy, getting into new sets like Tarkir Dragonstorm. In 30 years, when they're 40, will they be looking at unlimited cards, beta cards, Arabian Nights cards, and be like, oh wow, I really love those, I have a connection with them? And the thing is, like, I gotta be honest with you, I don't think it will. Because I think it's a special thing. I think you have to have a connection with it. And I was trying to like compare it in my brain to, say, like video games, comic books, movies, things like that. And now I know, say, like, let's use like video games, for example. I grew up again in the 90s era, and you know, it was Nintendo, it was Super Nintendo, it was Final Fantasy. Why do they put stickers on these cards? But it was, you know, it was Final Fantasy on Super Nintendo, and Final Fantasy 7 on PlayStation 1, for example, like different RPGs, and like the Tekkens, the Street Fighters, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, all that kind of stuff. So I grew up with it when it was created. And now it's funny because I have a son who's a teenager, a young teenager, and like I've shown him these old games, like the old Super Mario Worlds for Super Nintendo. I've shown him like old Atari games, and he absolutely loves them, and they're cool. But is there like an ultimate connection with it? I don't think that it's the same thing. You can appreciate it, but it doesn't mean that you're going to totally have that connection with it that's going to have the full on respect, I think, that people that grew up with it. What I mean by that is, let's say right now, you know, the market's kind of low. I think you can get, I looked the other day actually, like an unlimited Mox Pearl, so a Power 9, a Mox, an iconic card. You can get like a beat up copy on TCG Player for like, I think just under $2,000 for like a heavy played copy. I think just under $2,000. I think at its peak they're around $3,000 or so for a beat up copy, in that range, whatever it is. Now, again, 30 years from now, I'm 70-year-old, I'm an old man. You know, my son will be in his 40s. You know, that a whole nother generation has come. Like, and let's say Magic is still printing cards, they're still making new sets, and it's still going strong, let's just say. I just don't know if people are going to have that connection with the old stuff, or if, say, the 10, 15-year-old kids getting into the hobby now with, say, Final Fantasy and Tarkir, are they going to look at that as like vintage Magic? Because not just because the cost of, say, like Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, Four Horsemen sets will be absolutely outrageous in 30 years, most likely, but I think they just won't have the connection, so they'll get the things that they appreciate early on. That's just my thought. There's no snow-covered lands, you know, I was just disappointed with that. I really thought that was like, every Jumpstart pack, the original Jumpstart, has like one special land that's like a fancy one. I thought that was the one. I guess it wasn't. But I wonder if they're gonna, like, if people will kind of revert back to like, well, the, you know, the old Alpha Beta stuff and like how incredible it is, or if they're not even really gonna care, or it's gonna be priced so high that like it's not even a question if they can even be involved in it, because it's gonna be like just for the ultra whales and things like that. You know, will any Alpha Common be like $200? I don't think so, because I think they'll all be like, some of those things won't be fully collectible. They're collectible, but not like fully wanted, and people want to pay super a lot of money for them. And I think there's going to be a lot of times where people are going to have like they're going to compare it. You know, I always, when I buy anything, I try to compare it to something else and say, all right, like if this costs me this amount of money, I can get this, or I can get this. And I try to do that. So like, for example, before I buy like a cool Alpha card for my collection, let's say it costs $200, whatever it is, I think, all right, like what else can I do with that $200? Can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? Or you know, would this make me happy? And if the Alpha card makes me happy, I buy it. Plain and simple as that. And I don't know if there will be this connection, but the reason I feel like there will be is when you look at, say, look at comic books. Again, I talked about video games a little bit, but like look at comic books. The old Superman comics, the old Batman comics, for example, the older ones, the old, you know, original appearances of like, say, Wolverine, Hulk, things like that, certain, you know, Marvel characters, DC characters, whatever. they're always going to be a connection with people, and I think those are always going to be sought after. So maybe they will be sought after. If you are a super comic book person, say you're getting into comic books nowadays, okay, you're like a teenage kid, it's the 2020s, you're getting into, say, comic books or something like that, and you fell in love with comics, it becomes your your lifelong passion to collect comic books or whatever and be involved in it. Say 40 years down the road, you're in your 50s, you've got some money, and you can buy some higher end stuff. Will those things even be obtainable? You know what I mean? Will you actually be able to get like a Action Comics #1? The first appearance of Superman from was like the 1920s or 30s, whatever it was. Will they even be affordable, or will it even want them, or is it going to come to a point where there actually is a cap with those kind of things? And that's what I'm not sure, because obviously, no one, you can't predict the future and all that. But I think that Magic is such a special game and such a special thing for so many different reasons, and there's so many ways to be involved in it, which is what I love about it. You could be involved in Magic just because you like to build decks, just because you like to open packs, you just like the art, you just like collecting, you just like playing, whatever happens to be. There's a million ways to be involved. Maybe you're just a buyer and a seller, but there's a million ways to be involved in it, just like any other hobby or anything. But will it come a point where everything and everybody is just completely priced out, like an Action Comics #1? Like, is an Alpha Black Lotus eventually going to be like $20 million, $50 million? It's hard to say no, but it's also hard to say yes, and it's totally unpredictable. I'm sure back, see, it's funny because when we were kids, I was like 10, 11 years old, we were playing Friday Night Magic at a bookstore, which you used to always go to. It was a place called the Village Bookstore. And I remember, I'll never forget this. There was a guy in there that was a little older than us. I think he was like 18 or 20. We were like 10, 11-year-old kids. And he actually had a limited Black Lotus he was trying to sell to a bunch of 11-year-old kids for $100. And I'll never forget that. And it was, I think it was a good condition, I don't really remember. But like, that's like an impossible task to ask like a 10 or 11-year-old kid for $100 back in 1994. That's like ridiculous. Of course, no one bought it and all that. And now that same card, I mean, what's a unlimited Black Lotus going for? I have no idea. I haven't looked it up in forever. 20 grand, 30 grand. I really don't even know, because I haven't looked it up in forever. Obviously, if someone could have predicted that, they would have just held on to them for all that time. But you can't predict those kind of things. It's who knows what's going to happen with collectibles, especially decades down the road. But like, will that continue? Will that $20,000 card in 30 more years, will it be worth 200 times as much? I don't know. Will it be worth just 10 times as much? It's hard to say, and it's like impossible to predict. But I always think about that. Like, again, I collect the older cards. They're for me. They're not meant to be sold. Will they be sold someday? Maybe. It depends. I mean, if I could sell them and like accomplish a different goal in my life, maybe. But it's not like it's like I don't buy old cards to flip them, to sell them. Sometimes I sell old cards, but like it's just because like I don't really care about this, so I kind of move on with it. Most of the time I buy old cards for the art, because it's incredible. Ironically enough, one of my favorite cards I actually got was actually like a Force Field. Because I love the art. A Mahamadi Jin. It's not an expensive card, but it's just a really cool classic art from like my childhood, and I love the card. So that's what I think it connects with. And I wonder if when this generation kind of moves on, again, we're talking 30 years down the road, will that passion for those old cards, will it exist? And it's hard to say, like, think of I guess, again, like you look at like an Action Comics #1 or something like that. I'm using that as an example, just because when it was made, I think it was like the 30s. It was made literally like 90 years ago. So pretty much anyone that was a kid back in the 30s, they're probably long gone now, right? I mean, they're not looking for that kind of thing. Plus, it's a crazy expensive comic book, for example. But I think certain things, they're so rare that they just demand a high price. But there's just fewer and fewer people in the world that really appreciate it. So I guess my question to this whole ramble is can enough time go by for people to stop caring about certain things so they become worthless? I don't think that that's fully possible, but I think that that's actually probable. I think that there's so many things in the world that were once collectible, sought after, wanted, or demanded, but eventually time goes on, generations change, and just needs change or wants change, and then that's not really a thing anymore. I know, like, for example, like my wife likes to collect antique stuff. She loves like old old antique stuff, you know, like that kind of rusty gold. She likes that kind of stuff, which is cool. But at the same time, like you can find it anywhere, any tag sale, any flea market. It's pretty much anywhere. And at some point, maybe there was like a bigger market for these things, you know, certain glass things that you see at like every freaking tag sale, every flea market. There, it's every storage unit, you know, that people thought were collectible, Beanie Babies, Pogs, all these kind of things. I think the difference is some of those things were never really collectible that people maybe thought they were. But when you have again, a card game like Magic, you know, look at this Box of the Dark, right? It's 30 plus years old. These boxes go for what, 5-6 grand, I think, on the open market. And I bought mine to rip it open on my show. And in the past 6 months, we got through about half of it. You know, I figured this would probably take a while to go through. But again, there's less in the world. Every time like I get a box, there's going to be less in the world. But does the demand over the years, is it going to drop to the point where there won't be an interest in those kind of things anymore? Will somebody in 30 years, you know, I think I put those on the dark packs on my show for $99, which is based on the cost of the box. I know that's, you can buy them cheaper elsewhere, but will it come to the point, let's say in 30 years, if those boxes are $30,000, whatever they are, doesn't matter what it is, will somebody rip open packs of the dark for $500 a piece? And you got to wonder, like, will there be enough people to justify that? And I don't know. And that's kind of the thing. Magic is a very special game, and it has a real connection with people for so many different reasons. So I want to say that it will live forever, but nothing lives forever. Everything eventually will pass, and everything eventually will, you know, won't be a thing anymore. And I always wondered, like, let's say Wizard stops printing cards tomorrow. So tomorrow, they cancel all sets moving forward. Company shuts down. Another Magic, not one more Magic card is ever printed again in the world. So every single card is officially a reserve list. Every pack is officially the last one. You know, the last printings they have. That's all there is in the world. You know, I think there would be an immediate skyrocket in prices, and everyone would hoard everything they have. Makes sense because everything's basically reserve list. But eventually, if new people aren't brought in, then eventually the old generations die off, and it's not a thing anymore. It's kind of sad to think about it that way, but this is just what was going through my mind. I kind of wanted to get the words out there, and just I wonder if people think about these things the way I do, because again, whether it be a video game, you're a video game collector, a coin collector, Magic cards, Pokemon, it could be anything. I mean, again, you can collect people collect anything. Like it's crazy. And so, but if there isn't an interest in it, does it only have value to you? And if it only has value to you, is it valuable? I guess the answer is yes, it is. Not monetarily, but it has a sentimental value. And I think that's more the important thing than the monetary value, is the actual sentimental value of how you connect with it, how you connect with a collectible, whatever it is. And can it last forever? It's a weird question to think about.